I work in a federally adjacent entity, and last week, over 100 people were let go, fired, just like that. And although it didn't impact my team or my role directly, I felt the ripple through everything. I also had two people reach out to me that ended up being a couple of the colleagues that were laid off. And it was interesting because despite the fact that they were both surprised and processing through those emotions, one thing I noticed was that each of them had a sort of flicker of possibility in their communications. So the first one said something like, "Hey, it doesn't look like I can continue to do this kind of work. Maybe I'll start looking into something else." And the other one, who is around my age, so kind of Gen X, she said, maybe this is the big change I needed to start that other thing I wanted to do. So it was interesting to be able to see that even in the messiest moments, there's still room to pause and ask, is this a disaster or could this be a turning point? This video will is part of my federal layoff series and dealing with the uncertainty. And this is not about trying to silver line your layoff or pretend that this isn't painful. Not at all. We don't do that here on Self Coaching for Skeptics. I get it. This mini series instead is just about that, helping find tools that might help us through what's coming up. So, what was interesting here, though, is that sometimes there's a question worth asking when the dust starts to settle a little bit. What if this isn't just an ending, but also might be a pivot? The first thing you might want to consider, if this has happened to you or happened to close to you, this is an exercise that you can do even if your job isn't threatened at the moment, but you could put yourself in the place. And I promise you, if colleagues around you are getting fired, you're definitely going to be able to imagine yourself in that same situation. And one of the things you might try is to kind of think about minding the mess, as it were. Take inventory of anything that you might have been tolerating in your current role. And I'm not talking about tolerating the uncertainty or, the kind of the very intense feelings that might be happening in this moment, but rather, was there anything in your role that you might have been kind of putting up with that you wish had been different? That maybe even in a good job, we have to adapt to things, and maybe we realize that later that they drain us. So, for instance, in my role, I took over willingly a colleague's workload when she left the team to do something else. And it was always supposed to be a temporary role. And for a while, it was great. I was able to, thinking I could handle it, and was able to, please the team in the sense that somebody else was taking care of things. But as the volume kept increasing, so did the pressure. And it finally became clear to me that I really wasn't in a sustainable role with this amount, that my own customer service was diminishing, and I was starting to feel resentful about a job that I had otherwise liked. So, in that case, I took a moment and talked to my boss, and we talked about what we were going to do forward. But I realized I had a tendency in this job that to kind of tolerate this idea that I can do it all, or I can take on this amount of volume without really looking at it critically. So the second strategy is to kind of salvage the greater signal, meaning rather than just zoning in on the tasks that you did or didn't like, think about, what about your job um, would you take with you if you started over? Again, these aren't tasks, but themes, maybe the values or the overarching skills that you could take with you into another role. So if my federal job were suddenly to end, and believe me, it's crossed my mind, especially these last couple weeks, I would probably take these kind of skills that I share here on this channel with you. In my team, I kind of unofficially serve as a mentor and a role model, and I also train some of the newer members of our team on the types of things that we do. I also try to model the kind of composure and calm that I feel like would help the team through this kind of uncertainty. And in general, we're in a service type of job, so we have a lot of people needing our services and also providing a lot of both positive and negative feedback. And I try to, demonstrate what that could look like if you're willing to be open to criticism, but also confident in what you're delivering. And so if something happened with my federal job, I know that I would take those same skills and really mine it into this YouTube channel. I'd certainly have more time to do so, but I would probably try to double down on those kind of skills and see, like, where can I learn more about coaching? What are some free options out there that I could try to use this? Where might I offer these skills in a volunteer basis while I'm working on building this channel? Again, this isn't a case of like trying to base your ideas of next steps on fear, but just to think about, in a kind of critical and holistic way, what would I take with me? This is not, to be petty, but to provide clarity. So, there's going to be things that are your signal and they will help you focus your energy in your next step. So, if there's anything that you like about your current role and think is something you would take with you, be sure to put that in the comments too. I'd love to hear what people say. So, the third strategy to introduce is the idea of trying on a new story. So, if I were to lose my federal job tomorrow, my first thoughts, of course, will be this is a huge loss. What am I going to do? And then what now? So, these are a normal reaction. Of course, you're going to be having, the potentially negative ideas about this. But as we showed in my initial example, it could also be, what if I tried on this is a disruption I didn't know I needed? What about if I could take this and really start building my YouTube channel? Or what if I started to volunteer as a coach in some of the community? you know, it's using the skills I've built here, like mentoring, coaching, and communications. How can I look at those in a different way? So it's a lot like I said, trying on an outfit, see if something like a new thought would work. Have the thoughts, this is terrible, I don't know what I'm going to do. But then pause and see if maybe you could try on like a different thought, like a reframe. So maybe this isn't an end, maybe this is just the next chapter, or maybe this whole thing isn't a failure, but it's just a chapter I've outgrown. And then again, trying a new story doesn't mean you're faking confidence. It doesn't mean you're pretending something, impactful hasn't happened. It's just opening up to the possibility. And when you feel that openness and you can sometimes sense it in your body, it will feel a little more relaxed and you'll be able to kind of see what else might be available on the horizon. And I always think of this. I grew up, part of my childhood was in Kansas, and every spring they do a big prairie burn. And it's kind of scary, and there's smoke everywhere, and you get ash sometimes, and it's quite dramatic to see the flames like going over several acres. But they do this on purpose because after the smoke and the ashes have dwindled, it allows and promotes new growth. So that could be the analogy here. You've been through the burn and now you've got this opportunity to like shoot up some new stalks. So if there's a new story you think you'd like to share or want to put it in the comments, I'd love to hear that. So please do. And the bonus tip here, or the bonus thought to share, is let it be both. Let it be both, a hard and a turning point. You can grieve what you've lost and be open to what's next. We can have that without it necessarily showing up as cognitive dissonance, but rather, an openness. And you don't have to rush to reframe. You don't have to stay stuck either. And I think that can be, when you're at that point that you're ready to kind of look at this in a different way, it can be, help you move through those emotions too and just be sort of invigorating. Like I said in my beginning intro, when I talked about the employees that reached out to me, it took them a couple days. I didn't know for sure who had been let go. And so when they did reach out, it was nice to see that, although I'm sure it was a shock at the time, that they both had a moment to see, hey, this could be the beginning of something great. So, if you found this series helpful and it's made these uncertain times for you look a little more manageable, please hit subscribe and drop a comment. I'd love to know what you've taken away and what story you're trying on. And while this may be one of the final videos in this federal layoff series for now, I'm always listening and I'm always creating. And if there's something in particular you'd like to see me cover next, please reach out and share it. I definitely want to be serving the people that are going through this, and it helps me as well. In the meantime, please take care of yourself, be supportive of you and your people, and keep moving forward. You've got this. Thanks.